I think everybody is here. So we are going to be having a conversation today. It's all about working with actors. And we've got special guests from both the actor's perspective as well as the writer, director, producer perspective. And as usual, we will begin our conversation with a little bit of an origin story from each of our panelists, talking about how they got their start, a little bit of their background, and kind of their journey to where they are today. And then we will jump into the tales of acting. And everyone, if you want to engage in the chat, you're welcome to. So Robert, you want to kick us off?
How's everybody doing? Good? My origin story, it sounds so like Marvel or DC when you say that. Mine is not as Marvel or DC. I actually came out to LA to be an actor. That was my original objective, was to be an actor. So I did what a lot of people who move to LA do. I came out here with a resume that was completely made up. It was entirely fake. Not one credit on it was real. I did, however, lie and say I was in the Screen Actors Guild because I just looked at some other resumes and I'm like, huh, SAG, that must mean something. So like I put my name and they said SAG. And somehow I ended up getting an agent off of it. And then when I went and I was with them for about 2 weeks, and I got my first audition to guest star on a TV show that was filming in Hawaii at the time. And I booked it in the room, and I drove to my agent's all excited, and my agent was on the phone, and she's like, no, he just walked in. Can you hang on a second? And she puts on my, and she goes, you're not in SAG. I said, yeah, I know. I'm like, I don't even know what fucking, I just saw it on, but she goes, you wrote SAG on your resume. I'm like, everybody did. She goes, but now you got the part, and now you have to go to Hawaii to film, and you're not in the Screen Actors Guild. They're going to give it to another actor. And I grabbed the phone from her hand, and she was on with the casting director, who was this woman, Sally Steiner. And I said, hey, Sally, it's Robert Munic. How are you doing? She goes, this is so inappropriate. What are you doing right now? I said, well, I just want to make sure I'm going to go to Hawaii and do the TV show. And so I ended up actually, they were so uncomfortable, I think they had to hire me at that point. And then acting became my profession for 5 years. And out of that, I ended up on different sets. And I was working, doing a mini series, and I'd been on it for about 7 weeks. And the director reached over and he snapped his fingers in my face like 3 times. And he said, hey, you, let's go. And I said, hey, man, like, no offense, but my name's not Hey You. I've been here for 7 weeks. I know I'm not like the #1 on the call sheet, but like I've been here for 7 weeks. And he said, I didn't hire you so I could learn your name. I hired you so you could learn your fucking lines, hit your fucking mark, and go the fuck home. Are we clear? And I said, crystal. And while I was doing that, I was acting in a movie up in Northern California called Radio Flyer with a wonderful director named Richard Donner. I was on set one night with Richard Donner and Laszlo Kovacs, a cinematographer. And I said, hey, could I look through the camera? I've never looked through a camera. I've been on sets for 5 years. Do you mind if I see what you've been seeing? And I looked through the camera, and something in my mind just went, oh shit, I need to be on this side of things. Everything crystallized for me. And out of that, literally, it was a complete flip. And from that day, I went back to LA after filming that movie, started writing. A fluke again, never wrote anything, sold my first movie as a writer. And then writing became directing, directing became producing, producing became show running. And that's kind of my origin story. It's just been born on a resume made out of complete fabrication and lies. And it's worked thus far. And so that's the gist of it. Where I'm at today, I'm currently working on a series as the creator showrunner, which is one of the Power spinoffs. Having a blast on that. It's been an absolute treat to be a part of this world and to be working with these characters that Courtney Kemp created, and to be taking one of them into his own universe has been an absolute pleasure. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
That's a great one. You just gave Elgin James a run for his money in terms of short stories. And so are you in SAG now? Or that's the question is, did you ever get in SAG?
Not only am I in SAG, I currently, I keep my dues current. I adore actors. I'm married to an actor. She has been a working actress for 20 years. And yeah, I have a tremendous amount of love for actors. I could spend, it's funny, I'm always torn. I'm like, I have so much fun during my day with the crew, but then I just love hanging out with the cast equally. And every once in a while, I'll write a scene that I'll be watching in Video Village. I'm like, oh, I just wish someone would tap me in right now. I just want to tap in and just get in there for a minute, you know? So it's been good.
Awesome. I feel obliged to go. Tiffany, do you wanna take us next and tell us a little bit about your origin story?
Sure. Hold on, I'm just on puppy control and he's about to jump off the couch. So I'll just introduce you guys. This is my quarantine puppy. His name is Loki. Yes, I'm a huge nerd. It's comic book / Vikings. So my origin story, it is comic book related. I grew up reading comic books and playing video games. It kind of started with my dad, who basically introduced me to Storm and the X-Men comics, because I'm multiracial, and so it was seeing Storm for the first time for me was the first time I'd seen a character that was completely badass but looked like me too. So that was really cool. And then from there, it just became kind of an obsession for me, reading comics and wanting to play at some point a comic book character that I loved. So both my parents were the first ones in their family to go to college. So for me, it was really important that I went to school. My parents were like, not for acting, it's going to be for something else that, you know, you can actually get a job in. Which at the time I was like, whatever. Right now, while we're going through quarantine, I'm like, okay, maybe they were right. But yeah, so I went to school for broadcast journalism, and I tell this to everybody, but I'm like, I could not be more grateful that I did it, because for our last semester of our senior year of college, you have to do every position on a newscast. And for me, it was such a great learning experience, because I saw that, you know, when you're in front of the camera, you're not the only person that's important. The director's not the only person that's important. I had to write my own stories, go and shoot them, edit them, produce people, direct people. I realized that I do not like telling people what to do, which was a great lesson for me, that it's like, it takes an entire team of people to make a project come together and to have it work. And I think as an actor or anyone in this industry, having that appreciation is so important. It's so vital. And you can tell when a project works that everyone's on the same page. So yeah, I went to college, and then I ended up moving to Los Angeles because I wanted to work for this network called G4, on a show called Attack of the Show. And I had been coming out to California. I was born out here, but I moved a lot. And so I started doing the car shows, because I was into cars as well. So I was doing car shows, and every time I came out to LA, I would meet with the talent people at G4, and they were like, we can't do anything till you move out here. So I did, no job, no nothing. And I was like, let's see what happens. And I did actually get to work on Attack of the Show, which was such an incredible experience. And I think it's one of those things too, you learn in this industry. People talk so much about networking, and on the positive side, almost every job that I've had since then, there's somebody that worked at G4 that is there now. I mean, that was there then, is now in other jobs that I have. And from there, I'm a hustler. I like working really hard. I feel like I did so many things in the hosting world and love it and love talking to people, but it kind of got to this place where I was going on sets and interviewing actors, and I was like, I want to be doing that. I want to be challenging myself in that way. And so I started auditioning and started booking small things here and there. And then kind of, you know, you hear that story that everyone's like, there's no one way to get into acting. I was booked Jane the Virgin, I did Supernatural, and then it kind of came up that obviously the Harry and Meghan Markle story came along, and I auditioned for that role, and that was my first lead in a film, which came out on Lifetime last year. And it was such an incredible experience for me. I look back and I'm like, it was like grad school for acting for me, because I did everything from like being pregnant to holding a baby to having animals to getting in a fight with parents to sex scenes, all in one film. And just from, you know, hearing your story at the beginning, it's like I walked onto set and I made sure that when I felt comfortable, I let the camera guys and everybody, the DP, I was like, this is my first lead. So anything that I can do to help you guys help make your job easier, I want to learn too. And I think when you do that, it just made the whole experience so much better, because it's like, I didn't know shots or what they meant with like a long lens or what the numbers meant and stuff. So I learned so much on that side. And then it's just been, this year was my first big pilot season, which was great. But we're kind of in this weird spot now where it's, who knows what's going to happen. Shot a web series in quarantine, be a director, cinematographer on Zoom, and, you know, just going with the flow now. We'll see what happens. So that's my story.
Perfect. We are definitely going to come back to the shooting a movie on Zoom during COVID, because that's definitely some information the students are going to want to soak up.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I also feel like we should be calling you Princess Tiffany going forwards. Like, I would just take that and hold on to it. Prentice, I want to come to you next, because Tiffany said she didn't really like telling people what to do. But as a producer and showrunner and writer, I'm pretty sure that you do.
Yeah, well, my story's beginning is I was 4 years old when Star Wars came out, the original, and I remember my parents took me to go see Star Wars at the Mann's Chinese Theater, which is on Sunset, and then just fell in love with it. And I was like, this is amazing at 4. And then they took me across the street. There used to be a Hamburger Hamlet, which is an old restaurant. They told me they were getting divorced. So it was such a weird day of like falling in love with something and having your family being ripped apart. But in that story was, you know, you don't always know sometimes how things are going to come full circle in your life, or why you need them, or why you're going through them. And so my dad and my mom had two very different points of view about the world. My mom was very much like, if it's white, it's right. If white kids do it, that's where I'm gonna put you. And my dad was like, everything we do is gonna be black all day. And so so when they divorced, their agreement was, if I went to a black school, that I had to play sports in summer camp with white kids. And if I went to school with white kids, I had to play like sports in Compton, where my family had a business. And so I would go to school with my black friends, listening to like all this early hip hop and all this stuff. And then in the summertime, I went to this all white camp in the Valley. I grew up in LA, this white camp in the Valley where they're listening to, so I'm listening to like LL Cool J, early hip hop guys you probably don't even know. But then I go to the summer camp and I got to learn like Culture Club and the Bangles and the Go-Go's, and I don't know any of that shit. And then, but all summer, I don't learn any black music. Now I gotta like start learning my black songs again. And then I gotta start learning my white songs again. And I never really felt comfortable fully in any one group. And even so, like even on the summer camp posters, remember I'd be the only black face on the poster. So you see me with like a hat, or me with like a bandana. And I was just like, oh, it looked on the poster that this camp was super diverse, but it was just me in different outfits. And so, but then I grow up, and I grow up, I go to high school out here, and I go to film school at USC. And what I realized when I got to film school was there were only 3 people of color. There were me, a biracial black woman, and then an Asian man. And I learned that like, oh, but because I had had a life experience being the only one, that wasn't uncomfortable for me to be the only one, even though sad as it was. But so I wasn't caught in that. I could just still try to thrive in an environment where if you're working in Hollywood and your kids of color, sadly, that is kind of the world you're going to be walking into. And so once I graduated college, I thought I was going to make these independent movies at the time, but nothing hit, nothing I did. I couldn't buy anything. I couldn't make anything. I was trying. And at the time I was working at like a nonprofit. I was a substitute teacher. I worked at a group home, and just all throughout hustling. So 9 years later, I finally got my first job as a writer on a TV show called Girlfriends in 2004. And then around that same time, 4 years later, they had a big writer's strike, and all these black shows and shows of color were getting canceled. And then I had to go work what I call, like I had to do my great migration and start working on mostly all white shows. But again, the experience that I had as a child, the experience I had in film school. So when I had to be the only black person in the room, that didn't intimidate me to speak up or share my opinion or share my voice because I had been prepared for it. Again, I didn't realize why I was being prepared for it. So sometimes you're going to go through stuff and don't really know why until much later. And so I worked on other TV shows like Scrubs and Happy Endings and just kind of was grinding my way as the only Black person in the room, which obviously got very frustrating. But you know, you got to push through. And on a show called Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and then it was off of that I ended up meeting the right people to showrun Insecure for HBO with Issa Rae right now. And again, that's politics to me, directing a movie for Netflix a year before last that just came out this year, and selling another movie to Netflix like to direct next year. So that's sort of where I'm at now, and selling shows as a showrunner the same way at HBO.
That's great, and I definitely want to talk a little bit about Uncorked as we go down the road, because it sounds like it draws some from your personal experience and crossing worlds. And I also have to say, so when Run DMC and Aerosmith came out with Walk This Way, was that a big moment?
It was a big moment, but at that time I was like, I don't really like this rap rock thing. I was like, just be rappers, just be rockers. Now I appreciate it, but at the time I was like, I'm not really messing with this Run DMC shit like that.
So you all can look up the music video for Run DMC, Aerosmith, Walk This Way. Daniel, let's bring it over to you.
Sure. I love that video, by the way. I love Aerosmith and Run DMC coming together. I thought
when they come through the fake wall, man.
Yeah, they come through the fake wall, yeah.
with Steven Tyler's big lips coming out and like doing the thing right up close to the camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, now we sound super old, don't we?
We do sound bad old.
Hey, everybody. I'm Daniel. It's nice to meet you all. Christian, you there? Wake up, Christian. Hey. I'm looking at all your faces and I'm super excited to see how many diverse faces there are, and like just I really do hope that this is the future of Hollywood right here, especially for Ricardo when Ricardo disappeared. But you know, I'll tell you my origin story really quickly. There's a lot we got to cover, so I'll keep it brief. But I was a teenager minding my own business, and then one day I got bitten by a spider, and once that happened, my whole life changed. I turned Asian, first of all. I grew up white, and but it's okay. You know, I've learned to adjust, and I went to high school and graduated, went to college where, like any good Asian boy, I was expected to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so I went to college thinking that's what I was going to do as well. But I left college after having taken an acting class thinking that, you know, my life was destined for something different. So I ended up adding acting as a major in college, and then moved out to New York and started working in theater as an actor. I worked at places like the Public and, you know, some other off-Broadway houses. And I made my first appearance on TV on a show called Law and Order back in the very, very early days. And I was terrified. If you ever go back and, you know, that happens to be on the air as a rerun, just look into my eyes and you will see a very scared young man acting with Chris Noth and Jerry Orbach. But you know, once I realized I wanted to be an actor, I decided I wanted to get better at acting. So I went to grad school at NYU and got my master's degree from there with some other notable names that I won't drop at the moment, but it was really where I learned how to be an actor properly. And then after that, I moved out to Los Angeles because my wife and I had our first son, and I was looking at my paycheck from the Public Theater, and then I was looking at my son, then I was looking back at my paycheck, and then realizing there's no way I'm going to be able to make a living doing this. So we moved out to LA, started slowly working up the chain from literally co-stars to guest stars to recurrings to regulars. And I did a season as a regular on a show called Crusade. And then a couple of years after that, I got a show called Lost. And that was what moved me out to Hawaii. And that was 2004. And I've been there ever since. I did a series after Lost ended called Hawaii 5-0. And that ended for me in 2017. But since then, I guess in 2013, I started a production company, and I've become a producer. I wanted to be just like Prentice, and so one of the shows that I'm producing is called The Good Doctor on ABC. Maybe some of your parents watch it. But I've been doing that since 2017, and I've known Rachel for about that long too, and we've had some projects together. And she asked me to come along here today, and I'm super honored to meet you guys, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have in store.
Well, you have students who are saying that their moms are into it, other people are into it, and I'm into it. And I think, so was that sort of a way of going back to the parents and like, I'm not a doctor, but I make a show that's set in that community?
Yeah, it's the best I can do, I guess. But you know, it's funny, like now, my parents used to be really against me going into entertainment, and I don't know, maybe some of you are in a similar situation, but you know, success is the best revenge, because now my parents, you know, are super proud and love to brag to all their parents, their friends, and you know, even my dad likes to even give me career advice once in a while, which I get a big kick out of.
I think that's a universal. So Munic, let's come back to you, and I want to take the conversation into the specifics about acting and directing actors. And since you've worn all the hats, and you know, I'd like you to kind of walk through how you go about the process of bringing out the best performances, and especially if you can think about how you might do that with COVID restrictions and having to direct people remotely.
I think working with actors, it's such an individual experience, right? Because everyone brings something different to the table, right? And I'm sure everyone who's on this with me will attest. I've worked with some of the greatest actors who, in between takes, they're cracking jokes, they're trying to make a cheese sandwich at craft service, they're FaceTiming with their wives, you call action and they break down and do the most incredibly powerful scene you've ever witnessed in your life. You call cut, they're like, who's got my cheese sandwich? Then I've worked with actors who walk in on the day and they're in character and their method, and you could only address them by their character's name. And if you don't, they won't acknowledge you. You know, I've worked with actors who refuse to take direction and or eye contact during the day. So everyone is unique to the process. And I think what works best is you want to find what that common connection is that you have with them, right? Because everyone's going to come to the table with their own ability, their own kind of tricks that work for them, right? And really lean into it, because that's their truth as a performer. And you know, you can't say to the method actor, you know, I'm not calling you Jim Johnson today, Aaron, because you're not. You get on set and you're like, oh, good morning, Jim. How are you? How was everything out in the log cabin last night? You know, and like literally they have to be brought into that space all day. Whereas the other actors on the cast, you know, I've had to then subsequently have conversations like, hey, we know Aaron, by the way, I'm using an alias for that person. Stop calling, you know, you got to refer to him as Jim today and every day, because that's what we're going to get the best out of that person. Because ultimately that's what you want to do. What's the greater good? The greater good is to get the best performance out of everyone, because once that one actor rises to that level and you get everyone to that level, everyone's sparring at the same weight class then. So that's what I always strive for, is to always bring people up to their best game. And everyone's going to come to it differently. And Daniel will tell you, not everyone shows up every day on the same level of preparedness. I've worked with actors who were the lead in a show who never once knew their lines. So they got in the habit of taping their script to the back of props, going so far as to tape their script to the back of a perp they were arresting as they're dialogue. They're reading the shit off the back of the actor's hoodie that he pinned on there, you know, about walking him to the police car. So you know, people come to set with all different levels and all different kind of abilities. And ultimately my job, especially, you know, currently running shows, is I always say, like, what's the best dinner party I want to put together? From my writers to then my crew to my cast, people you know are going to be able to thrive together, bring out the best in each other every day for many hours a day for many years. You know, Daniel's lucky he's had 10 year, about 10 and 10, right? You did 10 on Lost, 10 on 5-0.
Actually, no, it was six on Lost, 7 on 5 but both were over 100 episodes. So that was lucky.
That's like, you know, that's unparalleled. That's unbelievable. But I just want to bring out the best in everyone, because once you bring out the best in everyone, people will show up day in and day out and continue to give you that level. In terms of doing it right now, you know, I've been running my room for the entire time for Power via Zoom. And again, you know, Zoom is an interesting thing, right? Because you have to keep people engaged all day, because looking at computers is difficult. You space out. I had one writer last week, she, at this point, you know, forgot she was on camera, and she's sitting there, she keeps doing this. And I'm like, and I send her a thing. I'm like, yo, you're on camera. Fucking kill your lens, right? Like, what are you? She's like, what? I'm like, just sitting there doing the pit test in the middle of the pitch. So like, people kind of forget, whatever. But my point is, like, now, you know, we have a like more of it's a finite amount of time for attention span. So as you go into this, you know, preparedness is everything. As production as a whole is to always be as prepared, be ready to pivot, be ready to make decisions on the fly. But now if you're doing it via Zoom, you really have to come with your hit list and be ready to make this happen. But the hard thing will be, you know, one of the things I love so much about working with actors is the interaction, right? And being there, and having the ability to break down the scene and what it's about for them. And Zoom kind of gives us a little bit of distance, but don't forego your own desires to connect with those performers, whether it's remote, whether it's on Zoom or whatever, because you still want to bring out the best in that person on that day.
So Tiffany, I'm going to kick it to you. You know, you said you had just done something in COVID, and what was that experience like? And tell us a little bit about the specifics.
Yeah. So I shot a web series that ended up being probably over 3 weeks. So like 120 pages, so feature length at home. They sent equipment and gear to my apartment, and I set everything up, and, you know, had the director, lighting, everybody on Zoom, and they would walk me through setting everything up, the different apps on my phone, all that kind of stuff.
So just so you know, that's exactly what's happening with all the students.
Okay.
They're all going to be getting, those kits are going out to actors with the iPad Pro 4K and all that. So everybody should be paying close attention right now, because you're about to hear the other side of it.
So I think the biggest thing I would say is have as much patience as you possibly can, because there's going to be technical difficulties. It's just the nature of being on Zoom and using Wi-Fi and people having their phone on Wi-Fi and whatever else it is going on. I would highly suggest, if you can, which is what we did for our project, the director and myself and the other lead actor, we would have sessions, just the three of us, before we started filming. Because once you're in the actual scenes, it's really hard to talk about what your intention is, what you're thinking about the actual emotion in the acting, because your actors are thinking, I have to move the lights. Like it got to a point one day where I was like, guys, I just need to walk away for 10 minutes, because as an actor, usually when they're setting up for the next shot, that's your time to go over your sides for the next scene, or, you know, you're getting hair makeup touched up or whatever it is, or just a second to like step away. But in this situation, it's, you're moving the lights, you're getting everything set up, you're making sure that they're, you know, that everything is in the right position that it was before. You also then go and check your makeup and then are getting into the scene. So I think, like I said, patience is the biggest thing, because tech stuff, but also patience with your actors, because it's a lot. And, you know, like Munic was saying, you're going to get all kinds of actors. And hopefully you guys have really wonderful actors that are game, that are ready to do it, because it's a lot of work being an actor and doing all those jobs at once. but I felt really rewarded when the director was pumped about what we got, and the, cinematographer and everyone was excited and on the same page with us. So the other thing that I can say is really cool on Zoom, and I think we've all kind of done this in some of the other little panels, is the pop-out room. So if there's a moment where you feel like an actor needs to talk about something, or you want to just step away, because I think that's something where when you're on set and something comes up, you hopefully have a really good relationship with your director and you can be like, hey, can we just go chat about this real quick? But on Zoom, everyone is there. And we had my cell phone attached to the Zoom as well. So at one point the director was texting me, but everyone saw it. Fortunately, it wasn't anything bad, but it's like, just remember that when tech is connected, that everyone could be seeing stuff. So hopping out into like the pop-out room was really, really helpful. Just so that way we could have those moments to really like connect with each other, and that I could trust when he said we got it, I knew we did, because, as an actor, usually all you're thinking about is your performance and making sure that you do that. But in this case, you're thinking about all the other pieces running well also. So having that encouragement is really, really important, at least for me as an actor. But it's something I've never experienced before, and I know you guys are going to crush it. But yeah, when we get to Q&A, like if you guys have questions, I'm here for whatever you guys need.
Perfect. Prentice, I want to come to you with sort of a continuation of how do you get the best out of your actors, and what are you thinking about in those conversations, and how are you communicating with actors to get what you want?
Yeah, I think to the point, right, is like you want to put your actors in the best position, and really all of your crew in the best position to succeed, right? So you want to set everybody up for success, right? And I think one of the things is, one, being able to, I think, to really communicate what you're trying to say and try to articulate your vision for what you want as clear as possible. Because sometimes I think actors, I've noticed, of like just watching, like, I've directed, and I got to, as a showrunner, I get to watch a myriad of directors. And what I will say, the common thread that I think of every director who I've seen on our show and other shows that have gotten the most out of the cast is they're able to kind of very clearly articulate their point of view to what they're trying to accomplish in the scene. Anytime they can do that, it just promotes more dialogue for your actors to ask more questions, for you to ask more questions, for you to get deeper into the performance you're trying to get. When I find when directors come in and they can't really articulate what they want, or they might be great from a technical standpoint, but they're not great, but it doesn't really matter if the performance is not on the screen. So what I have found, and I remember I saw a director do this, and I thought it was the best thing, and I did it, and I continue to do it, which is I saw a director, and usually, you come in and you have your shots and how you want to shoot it and your stuff laid out. And one of our directors came in, this was like early, the first season of Insecure, and he was like, hey, I don't know how I want this scene to go. It could go 5 different ways, and I really don't know what's the best way. So like, let's just start reading it and let's just kind of play and see kind of what happens. And he said, I just know it has to start with you coming into the room. But let's just like try different things. And we rehearsed it. And it was so freeing because I watched all the actors just saying, great, we're all in on it then. Great. We're like all able to like kind of find it. And we took a much longer time to rehearse it. But what happened was we found other things that became more interesting. And the way it thought it had to be didn't have to be that way. And it made me get deeper into the writing of it. Like, well, maybe, what if I wrote this line differently? And what it did was freeing yourself to say, I don't know, when you don't know is also good. Because the worst is, I think, when you have directors who don't know, but then want to pretend as if they do know. And I think that just gets you into more bullshit that people can read through anyway, that actors can see through a mile away. And so for me, I think you have to, one, be very clear on how to articulate, but when you don't know, say, I don't know, this is what I'm thinking, but I kind of want to see how it feels. And if it doesn't feel right, that's okay, and let's find it. So I always feel being honest about what you're trying to communicate, and when you don't know, be honest about that too, and you'll find better stuff.
You mentioned maybe that you could look at writing a line differently. Could you give us a specific example? Because I think that may come up over the course of the weekend. And what does it take for you to go, this isn't working right, and fixing it on the fly?
I think one is when a lot of it's just gut, right? Like sometimes an actor will just say, this just doesn't feel right. And a lot of it depends on the actor's level of comfortability with what they're saying. So obviously a person who's like a series regular is going to have more comfort saying to the writer, I don't necessarily feel comfortable, versus somebody who's just coming in saying 2 lines. Like they may not feel they have the right to say that, right? A lot of times too is just, you're on the show, it's your project, and you kind of know how it should sound, and just trusting your instinct to go, that feels false. Somehow it just doesn't feel, it feels clunky, or is there a deeper thing to explore here? A lot of it's just being free to ask yourself those questions. And so there was an example on Insecure where I was directing a scene in season 3 where I had watched that other director say, I don't know. And it was a scene that was very troubling for me. It was the only scene I didn't really have a sense of how I wanted to shoot it. And I just communicated that to the actors I didn't know. And as we kept blocking it with my DP and stuff, better shots became interesting based on what they were doing, as opposed to like letting me, because the way that the scene ended up going, I would have never blocked it that way. I would have never changed, like we changed a few lines that made the scene much more interesting. We just pushed it, and I don't remember what the lines were. I just remember it kept pushing the scene to go someplace more interesting, and being free to be like, no, this isn't right. Like, because at the end of the day, you're always, when you guys write something, there's 3 different versions of the TV show or the movie, right? There's the version you write, right? And then there's the version you shoot, and then there's the version you edit, right? And they are all very different. But what you're trying to maintain, I believe, throughout all 3 phases is the truth. So sometimes you might write a scene a certain way, but when you directed it, it didn't look, maybe it looks a little different, but not necessarily in a bad way. But when you edit it, you might go, you know what, the scene is more interesting on their back than it is to see their face right now. Like the way this is just more interesting and more dynamic. But what you're still trying to maintain, I believe, in every level of that is authenticity and truth. And so I think as long as that's where you're always searching for from your actor, is like, let's find the truth of this moment, then you'll always kind of be in good shape. I think that's a thing you always should be trying to find.
That's great. I think it's an interesting point to think that you're looking for truth and authenticity when you're telling a story that's made up, right? So Daniel, let me come over to you and ask you the question, from both perspectives. And if you also want to touch a little bit on, if you're working with people who are not as accomplished as the actors who are joining us today, how you might provide direction there as well.
Great. Can I actually ask a question before I start speaking? Are all of you guys directing and acting in each other's pieces, or are you guys mostly directors or actors? Can I get a show of hands? Like, who are directors? Okay. And
just to jump in, sorry, 1 second. Everyone is doing something on everyone's project.
Got it. But it's not, oh, I see. But they're not necessarily acting or all just directing. So it's a mix of things. Okay. So, I think I think for the sake of what you guys are doing, I would say a couple of things. Number one is that as a director, for those of you who are directing, you are going to be responsible for the tone of your set. And so I think it's super important, like Prentice was saying, to be very prepared. You need to be the most prepared person on that set. You need to be, because you're going to have 100 questions thrown at you all the time, and you are going to be the person that everyone is looking to for answers. And so when it comes to like dealing with actors, I think it's really important that that you're not only there for them, because some actors won't want to ask you questions, and other actors will want to ask you a million questions. So it's really about trying to find a right balance between being there for all the actors as a safety net, but understanding and trying to gauge the room so you're not over directing certain actors and neglecting others. So your preparation is going to be the key to all that, because if you can anticipate the questions your actors might ask, you may never need to answer them. But that one time that actor has a question for you, you want to be there with an answer that's studied, or as Prentice was saying, if it's even, I don't know, if that's coming from a place of study and thought, then that's an acceptable answer. But if it's an I don't know, where an actor can tell where you don't have your shit together, that is really not going to serve your set well. And so take a page out of Robert's book too. if you don't really know and you're not 100% up to it, fake it till you make it, because again, you are the one responsible for the tone of the set. So the other thing I would say is to keep it simple. When you're talking to actors, especially actors who don't have a lot of experience, it's not going to be helpful to that person to have like 10 different directions at one time. If you can think about the one thing that's super important for you to get in that scene, that's the thing that you should tell that actor. And then once that actor gets that, then maybe you can move on to the next thing. But don't all of you guys are young, you're trying to figure it out. So it's important not to feel overwhelmed. And it's important for your actors not to feel overwhelmed. And the last thing I'd say is to keep it positive. You know, if the atmosphere on set is panicky, then that's gonna kind of permeate into the actors' performances. And if an actor is panicky, it's important to keep positive with that actor so that you can get the best performance out of them. Because if you start yelling at an actor, especially a young actor, they could close down, and then you're never going to get what you want from that performance. So, as I said, you're responsible for the environment of the set. Make it one where people want to play and collaborate and bring the best of themselves to the table.
What are some things that you recommend that could be done to create that positive environment proactively?
I think, when we were doing a lot of theater, there was always a moment where the director collected the actors or the primary cast and just shared space with them just for a minute, even if it's just like, hey, this is what we're up to today. Really excited that you could be here. Just wanted to say hello to each of you, just so everyone felt welcome and that there was a shared kind of spirit to start the day. Little things like that can go a long way. And, or even if you're seeing an actor and they're not even asking for feedback, just to go up to them and just say, hey, you're doing great. Because I don't know a single actor who doesn't want to be told that they're doing a good job. So even if they're not asking for it, those are some small things that you as a director can do to make sure your actors are comfortable.
Tiffany, would you echo that?
100%. It goes a long way just to say you're doing a great job, because I can talk about this one because I talked to the director about it afterwards. I did an episode of Supernatural, and when I went to the set, it's such a well-oiled set that, everybody knows what they're doing. It was second to last season. They've done this a billion times. I'm just, a guest star for the episode, so I didn't want to, ruffle any feathers, step on any toes. So I kind of was in a place where I was like, I don't want to ask any questions. I'll just try it. And then if I'm doing it wrong, someone will tell me, which a lot of times works. But the director said literally nothing to me. There was never a moment where he was like, great job, you're doing great. And I was like, well, I mean, they're not going to reshoot the episode. No one's saying anything, so I guess I'm doing okay. And then fortunately, we ended up on the same flight back to LA, and we were sitting in the waiting area, and I went up and was chatting with him over coffee. And I was like, listen, I just wanted to make sure that you were getting everything that you needed from me. And he's like, absolutely. And I was like, okay. So you never said anything. And he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I was just so focused on everything else that I didn't even think about it, and you were crushing it. So I didn't need to say anything to you. And I was like, I know that for me as an actress, I had to be aware that he's doing 100 things, but having just a little bit of him being like, great job, would have made me stop spinning the wheels of shit, am I doing the worst job ever? So yeah, if you can give those tiny moments to your actors, it's really, really helpful. Because it's the same thing as freaking training a puppy. It sounds dumb, and I'm not saying actors are puppies, but in some way where it's my trainer's don't only say no to your puppy. Make sure that you're encouraging him when he's doing good stuff, not just the bad stuff. So it's if you're working with an actor and every note that you're giving them is saying that they're not getting where they need to be, it gets a little draining. So make sure when you're working with your actors that you can give them those moments of oh my God, you crushed that, or you were on the same page. I totally saw what you were doing there.
That's great. I'm sure that analogy may have been used, but coming from you as an actor, it's totally okay.
I think we could all talk about this, but it's there is definitely, you become an actor because and you need people to tell you because it's a medium of everyone else watching you. So you need that kind of affirmation from other people at times, just because that's what the medium is the other people watching what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to open it up for questions for a little bit. Victor, unmute yourself and hit us up.
Sorry, let me just turn off my fan.
No, you're good.
Okay. Hi. This is a question for Daniel. Daniel, you're an actor, but you're also a voice actor. You're in Saints. You're Johnny Gat, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then you're also in The Legend of Korra, and you were in another thing. But like, how would you say is it an experience to be a voice actor comparatively to a regular actor? And how do you get a job as a voice actor compared to a regular actor?
Good questions, and thanks for reciting my resume. I really appreciate that. I love voice acting. In fact, before this, I was just at a voiceover recording session as well. I love voice acting because so often, you know, in what we do for a living, it's all about what you see, right? And so much of, you know, the roles we get to play are defined by this, and you know, and when you're just acting with your voice, it's really, you can be anyone, anything, anytime, you know, and it allows for a freedom of expression that I don't necessarily feel all the time when I'm acting on screen. And you can look like a complete idiot making faces and you know, trying different voices, and it's, you know, it's really freeing to be able to do that. And that's why I like it. Like, if you look at Johnny Gat is a guy, for those of you who don't know, it's a video game series called Saints Row. And this guy is a fucking like gangster, and he's a badass gangster. So every other fucking word is like, fuck you, motherfucker, like that. Like every and like, I don't usually get to play those roles. So to be able to do that is so much fun. And so to be able to do something like that, it's as hard to be a voice actor now as it is to be, you know, an on-camera actor, because it's very competitive. And there are a lot of other on-camera actors who are now doing more voice work. So it's hard to break in, but like anything else, I would suggest trying to get into some classes, or at the very least, just taking your iPhone and turning on your voice recording app and just experiment. Try different voices, play around, and see what you can come up with. Because now, like everything else, like if you can do impressions, if you can do comedy, if you can do any of that, you can put it on YouTube yourself, or hell, put it on TikTok, you know, and that's a great way to start. Because you've got to have that confidence that, you know, if there's an audition that comes up for you, that you have an idea and you'll be able to execute it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Joelle.
I think you just muted yourself again.
Oops, sorry. I have a question for Daniel as well. So you were saying that you ended up going to New York and doing some off-Broadway theater, then you came back to LA. And I also act, well, like a beginning actress. But how, like, what steps did you take, or what things did you do, or how did you prepare to be able to move there or move back? Like, did you get an agent first? How did you, like, what steps did you need to take?
Yeah, getting an agent is always a real difficult thing when you start off as an actor. And Tiffany, hopefully you can chime in here too. But you know, it's a real catch-22 when you just start off acting, because you need an agent to get work, but you can't get work without an agent. And so to try and break into that, like for me, I was just doing any reading that would let me, you know, be a part of it, like for no money, for like 10 people, and workshops, and just getting your name out there among the community, I think is really important, because then casting directors will at least kind of take note of you in some small way, and they'll know you'll be on their radar. But you know, when you're breaking in, someone once told me this about show business, and I really believe it. There's no room for you in show business, but you have to make room. And so no one's going to give you anything unless you're one of the very few lucky people. But so you've got to really do everything you can to get yourself noticed, to get yourself working. And I think the number one thing that's most important is to be good at what you do. So if you're in classes or you're doing workshops or you're even like looking at YouTube videos of master classes, though, and reading, like read the plays that you would want to be in, watch the shows that you would want to be a part of, try and get those scripts, and practice in front of a mirror if you have to. Just find that way to kind of put yourself in that place to succeed. And it all starts with a craft, because I'm not a big believer. I'm a believer that people have talent, but I'm a big believer that hard work beats out talent. So if you're talented and work hard, then you've won the game. But a lot of us, like, I'll admit to you, I don't think I'm the most talented actor in the world, but I will tell you that I work hard at it. And, hopefully that counts for something. But Tiffany, I mean, and Robert too, you were an actor. You guys chime in.
I totally agree with the hard work part of it. I think the biggest thing to remember in this industry is there's no clear one way to get to what position you want, whether that's a director or producer or an actor. Everyone's going to have such a different journey. And for me, it was, like I said, I went from hosting, and while I was hosting, I got to meet a lot of showrunners and directors and be on these massive sets. So I got a comfort level in these spaces that I think a lot of actors don't get to do until they're on set acting. But while all of that was going on, I was taking classes, and I was really hesitant to tell people for a long time that I wanted to act, because I wanted to make sure that when I got into the room, I didn't fuck it up. Like, if I'm gonna kind of put it out there that this is what I'm going after, I wanted to make sure that I could meet the opportunities with the talent, with the hard work. And I think that it's, there's always going to be people that are like, oh, I mean, for instance, when I booked Harry and Meghan, I literally had people being like, so did the casting directors just see a photo of you? And they were like, hire her. I was like, no. I auditioned. I went in the room. They watched my reel. They talked with my agents. It was a process, So I think that if you do the work and you feel confident in yourself for knowing what you're bringing to the table, that helps so much. Because no one's a friend of mine told me this, because I started like going to premieres and walking carpets, and she was like, why aren't you telling people that you're an actor? And I was like, well, because I'm a host. Like, that's what people know me as. And she's like, no one's going to believe you as an actress until you believe it first. So when you're doing stuff, like, you have to have the confidence to say, I am an actress, I am an actor, I am a director, and do the work to back that up. And then just telling people, it's like, you just never know the network of people that are going to say, oh, Joelle wants to act. Oh my gosh, here's my friend shooting this web series. We should talk to her and have her come in and do it. Or I want to shoot this little thing over here and she could do this. I did another panel for Film to Future the other day and was just talking about the fact that social media is so helpful because you get to market yourself. So as an actress, like Daniel, you were saying, you don't usually go in for those like badass kind of roles, but we have social media now. Like, I for sure do photo shoots and post things where I've done stunts and I'm like, oh, this isn't an acting project that I've done, but here are the things that I can do. And my manager and agents, they send those out, because they're like, yeah, she didn't do it in a film, but here's this clip of her doing this thing. So use all of that stuff that you guys have. There's so much available to you, like opportunities even like this where, you're getting to chat with people who have such incredible experience and a wealth of knowledge. And then you guys get to soak it in and put it all back out there. So yeah, I mean, just ask as many people and tell as many people what you want to do, and you'd be surprised who shows up to help you out.
Don't be shy. Daniel, I know you need to leave us at 2. So I'm going to give you one parting shot of what you wish you had known when you were Film to Future students age. What would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself, and first of all, let me say thank you to all you guys for letting me sit in and talk with you all today. But I would tell myself that it gets, I don't want to be cliche about it. You're going to have it's going to be hard at times. There's no question it's going to be hard at times. No one I know in this business has had a straight up trajectory. And just know that that's part of it. And if you can prepare yourself for the downs, you're going to be able to handle the ups. And if you can keep that in perspective, then, you know, think about the long term of it, because we're all going to have up and down days, but the belief in yourself needs to be steady and it needs to be constant. And you need to find those things that feed the belief in yourself, whether it has anything to do with acting or not, whether that comes from a good friend or a hobby that you have, you know, or your puppy, you know, something that gives you that reservoir, something that says to help you get through the tough times, because there will be tough times, but you know, I'm excited for all of you guys. I really am. And I want to thank you all again for letting me sit in. And Rachel, thanks for the invitation. And
I was going to say, this is great. And guys, Daniel and I worked on a show together. It didn't work out, but like I could drag him into Film the Future. So it all happens for a reason. Daniel, thank you so much. As always, you are one of the greats. So thank you so much for talking to our students.
It's my pleasure. And Tiffany, Robert, Prentice, Simon, great to meet you guys. Hope paths cross along the way. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, Owen, we're coming to you next. Go ahead.
Awesome. Hey guys, how you doing? So just wanted to say, as a producer and writer who works on his own stuff independently as well, how would you elevate material and management tactics? And how would you like implement that to create a successful show or film?
Go ahead, Prentice. He lost me at management tactics.
Yeah, can you repeat that part one more time?
Sure. So basically, like, I'm just asking, how would you sort of elevate the material that you write, or you know, implement your management tactics as a producer to sort of create a successful show or film?
I mean, on the first part, in terms of like elevating what you do, I think those are almost, I think they're like two different things, right? So like elevating your art, I mean, I think one is like pushing yourself as much as you can and surrounding yourself with as many talented people as possible. I mean, I think in the, at least for me in my writer's room, I try to find where I'm going to be the least talented person in the room. And find people who are like way more talented than me to help. And I think that's kind of the point, right? In some ways, it helps me be, and when I say that, I don't mean I'm talentless. I'm saying that I try to, where I'm like, oh my God, I wish my mind thought like you, or I love that you, oh my God, how do you think this way? Like just being enamored with the writers on my staff. I've been on staffs too, where the showrunner always felt he needed to be the smartest person in the room, right? And that doesn't always get you the best results. And so for me, I try to do that in lots of ways, and not just the directors we hire on the show or the actors I work with. As I think you want to be around, because one, that just kind of, you know, it's like iron sharpens iron, right? So you need to be around talented people, or people that sometimes might give a contrary view of the world than you, or a different point of view than you, and being comfortable. Like one of the things where I was on a show and it was like, it was me, I was the only person of color, and then there were like 8 white guys that went to Harvard, were all on the staff. And I was just like, how many guys from Harvard, they all dress the same, look the same, and being Harvard writers kind of is like a thing in Hollywood, certainly in comedy. And so I was just like, how many writers who look the same, act the same, talk the same do you need, right? In some way you like, and just, but then one me. And so for me, we were always the opposite, which is like I always feel you want a wide array of people that are giving you different energies, pushing you differently, pushing you. So when you talk to them, you do have to elevate your game as well. And so you can't just sort of, oh, I can kind of like BS my way through it. So I think that's one way, is to try to always surround yourself with people who you feel are more talented than you. I think it just helps push you and just open you up. On the finding other ways on the management side, I mean, I think obviously, as Daniel was saying, there's no like one way to get in. There's no one way to get your shot. I think you guys live in a very specific time. I think technology-wise, I think to what Daniel was saying, like I speak a lot at USC and places like that. And when I was coming up through film school, like everything was still shot on film. So you had to it was very expensive. You had to, you know, get film, get the cameras, get the film developed, process it, transfer it to video, edit it there, then transfer it back to film. You know, I mean, it was just very costly. Where now you guys can take your phone, shoot it on your phone, edit it on your phone, and upload it on the same device. in a day if you want to, and have it distributed all through. I mean, you control every means, you control the production and the distribution, you know, and so you guys you should be working at your craft every day. And I believe, like, I just saw a thing where this kid, you guys may have seen this Black kid who was like making all the special effects stuff for his TikTok. And then was like, somebody, I would love for, like, I forget who he said, like Marvel or somebody Disney to see this. And they did. Like, a lot of people were like, thinking, and then like now he just got signed at like ICM, and I just sent an email over to like, can I get a meeting with that kid? I just want to see what he's going to do. And not just because he's creative, but because he wouldn't be in that position had he not been honing his craft the whole time. Had he not been practicing making all these TikToks and working at the craft at VFX and pushing himself to get better, he got himself a management opportunity. Like, so I think sometimes people think about doing the management stuff and getting that, as opposed to like focus on the craft of what you're doing, and inevitably those things come around. It's like, there's no point for you to have like the hottest song, to have like to meet like, you know, Kendrick Lamar if you're a rapper, but you don't have any good songs for him to hear. You wasted that opportunity. You know what I mean? And so that's the point. It's like, I just say focus at your age. I just feel like focus on getting better, but you have the ability now to be seen at a much younger age than certainly when I was coming up. And so, but again, I would just say craft always first, and those other things kind of will come down the pipe.
One of the nice things about Hollywood is when there are people who see really creative, talented people, they're looking for them, and if they think they can make money with you, they will reach out, and your phone will ring or your email inbox will happen. Munic, you want to go ahead?
I'm just going to jump in with that for Owen. One of the other things is to get your stuff out there for other people, peers that for me, one of the things, being a writer is you might write the dopest shit. Like, you're like, oh, this is the greatest shit I ever wrote. Right. And then you get it out there, to people, your peers, people you work with, and they weigh in on that shit. Like, my whole thing has been like, I've never been precious. Right. I've never been precious with the shit I write. I take a sense of pride in what I do, right? But I'm a big believer in like more eyes on it in the writer's room in particular. It doesn't matter if you're the co-executive producer, another executive producer, or you're just there to get us lunch every day and get magic markers. If you got a great idea, I'm gonna hear it, we're gonna use it, we're gonna build on it. Everyone's got a voice. So you have to be willing, especially as a writer a lot of the time, to put your stuff out there, to get other eyes on it, and then to be able to listen to it, right? Because not everyone's gonna wanna fuck with your shit just because you think you're killing it. I've been working with Dr. Dre on this project for years, and I remember when we were sitting down one night, and I said to him, I was like, yo, Dre, like, you've done everything, in this arena. What made you wanna do a TV series, right? And in particular, like, you and I had met briefly, and you were like, yo, let's do this. And he said, you know what? At this point in my life, I only surround myself with people that I want to learn from. And I thought that was like the most profound shit, right? That you have someone that has made it in their, in their respective field, and he still wants to learn, right? It's like Prentice said, I still want to learn. Every day I go in the writer's room. Right? I still want to learn. I still want to surround myself with people that I could learn from. Right? And I just went through it on a script that I just wrote for the show. And I was like, oh, that scene was like, oh my God, the best couplet I ever wrote. And then they were like, yo, let's lose that scene. Let's move that, and you start having the conversation. And I'm like, all right, cool. Right? So you got to be receptive to being willing to change and listen and learn. Right? Because then what we do, especially if you're going to get into television, a lot of times and Prentice will say this, you're writing by committee. You're creating by committee, even as the showrunner, even as the creator of the show, right? Studio's going to weigh in. The network's going to weigh in. Your actors are going to have an opinion on stuff. Some of the other EPs are going to have. But you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to fall on the sword one way or the other, to say, yo, let's just do this. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And that's the other thing. You have to be willing to be wrong, But in terms of like continually building your craft, if you write something, get it out there, let people read it. If you shoot something, let someone see it. That to me has always been the best sounding board, to come back and then keep reworking it.
Thank
You mentioned, you know, your relationship with Dr. Dre, and how did that start? How did you first meet him?
Dre had done a piece a while back with this director, and they had an idea to kind of turn it in. They said, man, how can we turn this 12 minutes into a series? They thought there was a series idea behind it. So it was like this very top secret thing where I got a very cryptic email and say, you have 10 minutes to respond to this email if you want to sit down with Dre tonight at 8 o'clock, sign this NDA, email it back, we'll release an address in 3 minutes. So I'm like, oh, fuck, all right, cool. Don't know how I got my shit, but all right. Send the email, my phone rings, block number. I'm like, hello? Like, can you step outside and talk? I'm like, this is like some CIA shit. Like, what is happening right now? So I'm like, yo, what's up? They're like, is this Munic? Yeah, we've got your NDA. Cool. Can you meet tonight? You'll be parked at a Burger King a half a mile from the location. You'll be led into the location. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. Now I'm in, right? Just for the fucking experience. I want to see where this is going to go. So long story short, meet the person. They lead me in, go into Dre's private studio. He's in there. He was mixing some stuff at the time. I was working with Anderson Paak. And so he comes out of the studio. He's like, what's up? Did you check out our shit? I said, yeah. He said, all right, cool. What'd you think? I said, visually, dude, I think it's beautiful. I said, but narratively, you're fucked, right? You don't have anything to really fall back on right now, but visually, it's gorgeous. And he goes, what do you mean narratively it's fucked? I go, you got no story. You're done. And everyone just sat back like, oh, you could go. And Dre leaned forward and he's like, you're the first dude who came in here who was honest with me, right? He's like, so what are your ideas? And I came at him with like 3-4 ideas, kind of how I would build it out. And he's like, cool, man, meet me in Malibu tonight at 1 a.m. I'm like, yo, you know, I'm married. And he's like, 1 a.m. work for you? I'm like, yeah, 1 a.m. Malibu is cool, dude. And it's like, you know, so I'm like, yo, babe, I gotta go to Malibu. I'll be home whenever. You know, on the first night we just sat together and we were just talking. And, you know, he'd never written scripts before or anything like that. And I think it was like 5 a.m. The sun was starting to come up and starting to get light out at the beach. And I said, look, man, this is just jazz. What we're doing right now, this is just jazz. And something clicked. And the minute that happened, it was just like, it was just a great process, you know? And that's what it's been, you know? And we've been working on this for a while. It's the series, we shot it, we've recut it, we've reshot it, we've recut it. And it's kind of taken on its own legend as to who has seen this series at this point, because it's certain people have seen it, some people haven't seen it. There's a mythology around it. Will it ever be seen? But the experience was phenomenal. You know, it was really great to be able to collaborate with him on every episode like that. So it was cool. But it was just, again, to be honest.
Yeah, that honesty is really key.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might result in a no, but other times, you know, there's a lot of strength in giving people the truth, especially if they're used to hearing yeses all the time. We listened to the guys from the Lego movie yesterday talk about how Amy Pascal said there's no story in this movie, and they had to spend the next year rewriting before we got what we have. So we just have a couple minutes left, and I want to give everyone the opportunity I gave Daniel, which is if you could give some advice to your younger self and the students, you know, in a minute or two before we wrap up. Tiffany, you want to? Yeah,
I mean, I've talked about a lot, but I think there are like 3 things I would want to touch on a little bit. It's kind of what Robert was saying, the like honesty and trust. If you can build that trust with the people that you're working with, you're in such a good position to make something amazing. One of the projects that I was on, the director took the time to sit and we read the whole script through with the other lead and myself. And we talked out everything. He was willing to listen to everything that we said. There were moments where he was like, I don't agree at all. But it was a dialogue. And because we had that trust, once we got onto set, it was so much easier to work, because if I asked a question and he said no, I was like, okay, there's no conversation that needs to be had about it, because I knew where we were both coming from and I had complete trust in his vision for the project and knowing that he was going to make this look as good as it could possibly look. So I think trust and honesty is such a huge part of it. I think it's really important in this industry to know why you're doing it. There's so much stuff. And when I was younger, my parents would be like, why do you want to, I wanted to be a pop singer. I wanted to do this thing. It was like, why do you want to do that? And at the time it was, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, I want to be famous. And the older I got, I'm so thankful that acting didn't come first for me. I'm so grateful that it was hosting first, because it wasn't a drive that was focused on that sort of thing. And so for me, it became, I want to act because I see it as an escape. I love the fact that film and TV can say so much for people, that, you know, me being on camera, being multi-ethnic, can help someone else that is seeing themselves on screen, or, you know, you can tell a story that someone hasn't heard before. But also the flip side of it is I love the Fast and Furious movies, and I don't care what anyone says. I sit in those theaters and I can't wipe the smile off my face. So that's why I do this. I love the fact that it is this escape on so many levels. So make sure you know why you're getting into it, because like Daniel was saying earlier, you're going to have those down days. So if you have a reason that's driving you, why you're doing this on those harder days, you're like, okay, I still really want to be doing this. Like during this time of being home, for so many actors and people in the industry, it's like, what is the industry going to look like after this? Am I ever going to be on set again? I don't know when we're going to get to be on set. But I know that I miss it. And I know that I'm still creating with friends in any way I possibly can right now. And that to me is just even more confirmation that I'm in the right place. I'm doing the thing that I want to do. And then this might sound like airy-fairy, but I told
This one's got to be fast.
So putting out there what you want to do, like manifest it, say what you want to do, make lists. I have vision boards, and I can't tell you the list of things that I've done that are on that board that I'm still working towards, but then you go back and look at it and you're like, oh my God, check this off. So put out there what you want and really believe that it will happen. That's it.
Perfect. Prentice.
Yeah, I'll give you 3 quick things. One, don't underestimate the power of just being a good person. Like at the end of the day, like the business will do a lot of things, but if you say, hey, at the end of the day, I know I was the best person I can be just as a human being, because your reputation is who you are. And so I cannot stress just being a good person. 2, also, when you're making your projects, like nobody cares, get it done. Like nobody cares about your excuses. Nobody cares why you didn't finish it. Nobody cares that your mom died. Nobody cares about this thing. Nobody cares. Just nobody cares. So whatever you got to do to get it done, just get it done. Because all that matters is what's on that screen or what's on that TV. And the third thing I would say is like respect time. Not everybody has the same gifts. Not everybody has the same talents. Not everybody has the same, like I'm not a great guitar player, or I may not have the best abilities, but we all have 24 hours in the day to grind and to work. It's the only thing that you can't make more of. You may not be born 6'4", you may not be born this way or whatever, but everybody, but from like, you know, Jordan to Kendrick Lamar to you, everybody has the same 24 hours. We're all blessed with that. We may not be born in some economic systems, X, Y, Z or whatever, but we all have 24 hours, so respect time. It's the only thing you cannot make more of. So if you're gonna get up in the day and say, I'm gonna write from this to this, and I'm gonna produce from this to this, have that sense of time. Don't be like, well, maybe I'll start at 4 o'clock and no. Respect time. I promise you, please respect time. That's all I'll say.
Perfect.
I would just say what I would tell my version of myself at that age is like, appreciate what you have. Always be cool and good to the people you surround yourself with, and don't suck as a human being, right? Like that's just basic math. Don't suck as a human being. And everyone you encounter in this business, you will encounter them again. So remember, you know, I wish I was cooler when I was 18 and 17 on sets and 19 on sets, because I see those people now in my life and they're like, you were that motherfucker. I'm like, I was, right? So just always, you know, remember, it's a small business, it's a small group. We're all trying to create for the betterment, and just do your thing.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think that was a great conversation. I think it was one of our best, and I don't say that after every one.
That was truly amazing. I mean, such a good way as we do our production week to shoot this weekend. So, I mean, I feel like I paid you guys to say that. It was so perfect. But a huge thank you for your time. and energy. Students, stay on for 1 second. Tiffany, Munic, Prentice, thank you so much. Simon, I'll see you in 1 second when you leave your room. Thank you guys, really helpful, really appreciate it.
Dudes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Good luck.
Thanks, guys. Nice meeting
Looking forward to
everyone.